Hello everyone, welcome to another quick flange with Flange Master Tell. My name's Graham, I'm your Flange Master Tells, and as always I hope you all are flanging it up and remembering to bring a towel wherever you go, because towels are always useful, especially in this weather, lots of reasons to towel with you. Anyway, we're talking about the renewed rumors and talk about a Switch version 2. Well, there's technically a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro or some sort of new Switch hardware coming probably next year. Anyways, there's a couple things that have happened that have renewed that talk, and they're actually kind of maybe not so indicative of a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro, but there is something I came across that actually is more indicative that's not really getting talked about. And before we flange on into it, make sure to hit that subscribe button, don't smash it, don't bash it, flange it up and tap it like a cat trying to get attention. My cats do it all the time, and it's way more cute to be like pawing at it like you wanted attention for the subscribe button. Also hit that bell for notifications, and let's flange it up. So, the first thing that happened that got all this talk going again is this Iodine Chronicles Kickstarter. Not a game I'm personally interested in. Seems cool, just I'm not that big into JRPGs. I respect them, they're great, just not what I'm most into. There's awesome JRPGs out there that I've very much enjoyed, but I'm talking more like Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, that kind of thing. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is there's this chunk in here where they're talking about not knowing what Nintendo's plans are, and kind of like with Kickstarters that happen around new hardware coming, they kind of get put in a weird spot where they kind of have to try and predict what's going to be happening 2 or 3 years future when they actually want to release this. So the thing is, they have to program for hardware that they don't necessarily for sure know is coming, but are pretty confident will be coming, because it seems like the writing's on the wall if you really take a big picture look at it. So people are taking like this, like they know there's something coming and they're kind of trying to dance around it without saying they know, and that's not really what I'm getting out of this. I'm getting that it's exactly what they're saying it is they don't really know. It seems like it's really super high percentage that a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro or whatever is coming, and they're just trying to make sure they don't mess up and put themselves in an awkward position, especially when they hit their goal for $1 million for the console releases of the game. So it seems like they're just trying to respect their backers and respect the money that's being given for them to develop this game, and they don't want to like mislead anyone or do anything weird or wacky that'll upset people. And I think people want to Switch 2 so much that they're kind of reading into this a bit more than what it is. And who knows, maybe they do know something and they're trying to kind of address it without saying what they know. That's very possible. There's all sorts of NDAs where it's like, if they ever find out that you violated that NDA, it's going to be insanely expensive. So, and that's the thing with NDAs, yeah, you can violate them, you just gotta be willing to pay for it. And then also lose the trust of potentially never being able to sign another NDA again, because people will be like, well, you broke that one NDA, and even though you paid for it, we don't trust you to sign another one. So they could, hypothetically, if they knew something and they were signed to an NDA, they could say it, but the costs aren't worth it. And that's the point of an NDA. It's not to say you absolutely can't do this. It's to say you agree to penalties that are so high you wouldn't want to. So that needs to be clear with NDAs. They're not a firm, you can't do that. You're agreeing to a penalty that's very high to discourage you from wanting to do the things. So anyways, I'd say this is pretty much face value what they're saying it is. I think people are reading into it too much, perhaps. And I think there is a Switch 2/Switch Pro coming next year, but I don't think this is a reason to confirm that. So another thing's come up with Nvidia job postings, and just to give some more perspective, Nvidia is hiring a lot. They're like pages upon pages on LinkedIn. The original sourcing was Glassdoor. The content creator that initially brought this to attention, I just don't want to go there. So anyways, the point I'm getting to is there are a lot of recent job postings, like within a month of being posted on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is actually huge for professionals. Like a lot of people who aren't like big exec professionals don't really use it. It's actually a really good tool, even though it gets kind of maligned as like a boomer thing. And I get it. But there are good reasons to still use LinkedIn. I gotta reflange my whole LinkedIn thing myself. You can use it to your advantage in all sorts of ways. It's a great way to connect with people in a more professional context. Anyways, like the amount of job postings that are days to weeks old, like not even months old, days to weeks old, they are hiring a lot. But that doesn't necessarily, any of the stuff is going to apply to anything coming soon, because if they are working on anything for a Switch 2 or Switch Pro, they would have been doing that for years in advance. So something that they're hiring for, like that's just a couple weeks old, may not really necessarily be related to a Switch 2 unless it's coming out like 2022 or 2023, which I'd say would be too late. I'd say Nintendo wants to get a Switch Pro or a Switch 2 or something new with the Switch. They need to get that going pretty soon here, because they do need to compete with the next generation console hardware. Even if it's on their own terms, they need to do something. And that's the thing, we'll take a moment to talk about it. They need to do something. And that's why everyone's like, where's the Switch Pro? Where's the new Switch hardware? Where's the Switch 2? Where's the Switch home console? They need to do something, or they will be left behind. And that's part of the reason why I've been speculating that this year has been slow for Nintendo. 2020 has been a slow year. It was slow before COVID, and it just got even slower than it was beforehand when COVID became a big thing. And I think this was intentional from the get-go, because they don't want to compete with PlayStation and Xbox right now. It would not be wise to compete with them. Let PlayStation and Xbox have their spotlight. Nintendo doesn't need a spotlight right now. Let Sony and Xbox have that spotlight. Nintendo can go hard 2021. All these releases, we've been like, why haven't they been hyping it up? 2021, maybe 2022. But why are they waiting? Because they've been designed for a higher level of hardware that they haven't revealed yet. So they're not going to talk about these games because the hardware is not out. So it'd be weird if they're talking about these games and they'd be like, whoa, why does this look so good? Look better than a Switch can do. And they'd kind of like let the cat out of the bag by accident. Anyways, so the job posting in question. Oh, I got my job posting wrong order. So this job posting, it's in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv. I didn't know Switch was doing anything in Israel at all, like locally. Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't notice the location because I was just like, oh, Switch firmware verification, man. Just that they're hiring for this at all is very interesting, but that doesn't necessarily confirm that there's a Switch 2, because like I was saying, they'd be working on this stuff years in advance. So the job postings for this, you'd probably have to go back in time a year or two to find job postings that'd be relevant to a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro. Maybe this is related to a Switch 2 or Switch Pro, but notice this, knowledge in Linux. But there's other reasons for that. So there's not very specific stuff, but that's very interesting. Anyways, this is the job posting that got noticed. And it's this part here. We are now hiring a senior embedded software engineer for the Tegra Solutions engineering team. Work on next generation graphics and AI technologies for gaming consoles and AI edge devices. There's not too much here that really says too much other than DLSS 2.0. They talk about Tegra, but nothing. Vulkan, OpenGL, CUDA, but nothing. They do mention Linux and Android, but nothing that really for sure confirms the Switch. But like I was saying, this doesn't necessarily in itself indicate a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro is coming unless they're aiming for 2022 or 2023, which is possible. But if they're taking that long, I'd say they're taking too long, and they need to hurry up if that's actually their deadline. It makes way more sense for them to be doing something in 2021, although it might be as late as 2022. But if it's not 2021, it's going to be too late in my opinion. I think they need to move faster than that, or they will be left behind. Already at 720 and 1080, they are getting left behind. Anyways, we got to rock through this. This is supposed to be a quick flange and fast. just want to show quickly Tegra family kind of stuff, that there's more to the Tegra than just the X1. The X1 is based on Maxwell, K1's based on Kepler. The Tegra 4 family is more advanced. There is a Tegra X2. There's been speculation that the X2 could be what the Switch 2 or Switch Pro, whatever, is based on, but there's also been commentary that the X2 isn't going to be good enough, and that really hangs more upon power efficiency and thermal efficiency. So the problem right now is the X1 actually can do 4K. It is technically capable of 4K. The Switch could technically do 4K now, but heat and power. The battery would drain too fast and it would be cooking hot. So technically it could, but it'd need a way beefier cooling solution and a way better battery life that just doesn't exist in battery technology at the time. So at 20 and 60 nanometers, so the V1 switch, the original switch, is at 20 nanometers. The V2 and the Switch Lite are at 16 nanometer. As your transistors, so nanometer is a transistor size, as that shrinks, you get more power efficient and more thermal efficient. That's why it's such a big deal to move on to lower processes. So we do have some interesting things here with the models. There's this unknown TM660M that's still based on Maxwell, and you wouldn't really want to stick with Maxwell for anything more advanced. There's the X2, which is based on Pascal, which is the GTX 1080 level of tech. But the X2, like I was saying, it's still at 16 nanometer, probably not power efficient enough or thermal efficient enough. But we do have Tegra Xavier, named after Charles Xavier of X-Men. Higher clock speeds. What's the process size? Having a derp on that. It should say here somewhere. I think it's still 6. Can't really find it. But what I did find interesting here. Yeah, I'm having a derp. I'm pretty sure it's still 6 nanometer. Why is the model number NX with power ratings? The Switch code name was NX. That makes me wonder if maybe the Switch 2 or the Switch Pro, whatever, might be running on the Xavier. Just because of that model number seems very interesting. Don't have a lot of extra info. Volta, if I'm not having a brain fart at the moment, is the 2080 RTX codename. But what gets even more interesting is we got the next Tegra, named Orin, is supposedly Ampere based, which is what the Nvidia RTX 3000 series codename is, Ampere. So it's quite possible, and there's a lot of question marks. It's not like fully known what's all going on with this. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do have a Switch 2 or Switch Pro coming that's based on Orin, maybe both Orin and Xavier, potentially. And I've said this in a previous video, that'll be in the cards at the end here. This is going to be a bit longer than I intended for a quick flange, but whatever. So with that, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a home Switch, who knows what they'll call that, but some sort of home-only Switch kind of console based on Orin, and then maybe a portable based on Xavier. That I wouldn't be surprised by that one bit. What makes this even more interesting, and this to me adds more to the speculation in a more credible sense, that Nvidia is working with Nintendo for some new Switch hardware coming next year, maybe 2022 if they're taking their time about it, is Nvidia wants to buy ARM. Intel's also wanting to buy ARM. I really hope Nvidia gets it, because we can criticize Nvidia and Intel for a lot of very valid and legitimate things that they do weird, but I think ARM would be better off with Nvidia, especially with their Tegra chips. I think Nvidia is a very good place for ARM to wind up. Maybe I'm wrong, so let me know in the comments if you got some information that says otherwise, or you just have a differing opinion. Super interested what other people have to say. But we're getting kind of a bigger picture here, where we could see Nvidia buying ARM, really going hard with the Tegra, taking it to a whole new level now that they own ARM, and things get really interesting and really crazy, and there'd be some drawbacks too, potentially, but we just don't have the time to go deep into that. So the slow comparison chart's kind of interesting to take a look at it. Again, they don't know that much about Orin. Oh, Xavier's 12 nanometer. I was right about Tegra X2 being 16 still. I forget what FF and FFN is. SoC is system on chip. We need to know more about Orin, but Orin's looking pretty hyped the little bit that we do know about it. And Xavier would be a very good candidate for a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro portable. And it again, a large part of this comes down to power consumption and thermal efficiency. And they need to cool the chip, they need to power it without draining your battery in like 15 minutes. And that's the thing, the Switch could maybe do 4K now, but your battery's done in like 15 minutes. They could do maybe 4K docked. I'm sure some people are like, oh, 4K docked then. Now we run into thermal issues. They'd have to rebuild the dock so it adds extra cooling capacity somehow without being like overly cumbersome or expensive. But I've been wondering, well, why don't they throw in some sort of upscaling? And then you wind up into other issues with cost and expense and all sorts of other things. So I wouldn't be surprised if it maybe has like a native 1080 or native 1440 and upscales from there using DLSS. That's what I'd put my money on, is it'll render at a native 1080 or 1440, the Switch 2 or Switch Pro, and then upscale using DLSS, which basically DLSS is deep learning super sampling. Super sampling's not too far off from upscaling in a sense, where with super sampling anti-aliasing, you render at a higher resolution and scale down to a lower resolution. So if you're at 1080p with 4 times super sampling, it would render at 4K and then downsample it to 1080, and that helps get rid of aliasing artifacts and stuff, but then you're actually rendering it at 4K. So that's why super sampling in general can be kind of expensive performance-wise. And there's more to it than that. With anti-aliasing, that's a very simplified explanation of that. So just a little tech thing, stats thing on X2. Yeah, there's the 6 nanometer. That's where I was trying to remember. So this helps you see why gigaflops and teraflops is kind of sketchy, because it kind of depends on some variables. Anyways, interesting to look at, doesn't really tell us much, but this article from TweakTown, Digitimes wants you to be like signed in and paying for this stuff to read the article, so we're kind of stuck with the reinterpretation from TweakTown. But Digitimes is reporting that from industry sources that Nvidia is tapping TSMC's fresh new 5 nanometer process code. It won't be for Nvidia's next-gen Ampere GPU architecture or the GeForce RTX and GeForce RTX 3070 cards. So, there's nothing else really big on that, but the obvious speculation, especially at this point, I mean, prepare your salt shakers, peeps, they say, but something for the Switch 2, which would make a lot of sense, because like I was saying about power consumption and thermals, the lower you get your process, the smaller it is, the better thermal and power efficiency you have. So this, to me, is more of a reason to speculate about the Switch 2 and a Switch Pro or a 4K home Switch console, which is my personal speculation. I think we're kind of going to get both. I think we're going to get a portable new Switch that does 1080 or 1440p portable and then docks to 4K. But I think we'll get a dedicated 4K home-only console also that'll have the capability of syncing with a portable Switch. Any portable Switch, Switch Lite, V1, V2, Switch Pro, whatever you want to call the new Switch hardware we're expecting. I think we're going to have a coming full circle with the Wii U concept, where it uses the home console synced to a Switch 2, and then you can have emulation of Wii U games, you can have emulation of DS games, 3DS, 2DS, DS games. Anyways, there'll be a card at the end here that'll link to the video that talks about all that stuff, because we're going way over for a quick flange. I shouldn't have even called this a quick flange. My apologies. I thought I'd be able to get through this faster, but there's just too much. I should have never called it a quick flange, but we're kind of stuck with it now. Anyways, let's go back. So that to me is more of a reason to be speculating that we're getting a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro, is if Nvidia is working on some mystery 5 nanometer thing and Nintendo kind of needs to do something 4K or just at least get graphics higher end than 720 portable and 1080 docked. It just makes sense to me because they need something that's more power efficient. They need something that's more thermal efficient. Otherwise, they just can't make it portable. It just won't work because of the limitations of our current technology when it comes to, battery capacity and our ability to cool things using our current what we know. So they kind of have to bring it to a much smaller process to be able to be efficient enough for it to even make sense at a higher resolution. That's kind of the reason we are at 720 portable, 1080 docked, is it's really a power limit, thermal limit thing. We could have technically 4K portable, but then it'd have to be massive to contain the battery and the thermal solution. I just had the thought maybe someone could like make that a reality, but that's actually not that practical. Never mind that thought. Anyways, I highly recommend checking out my other video talking about my speculations about new Switch hardware coming next year. Are we going to get a 4K home console next year? I'll put some good money down. I'll bet hard on that. And if we don't get it 2021, at latest, we'll get it announced 2021 and it'll come 2022. But if they're that slow, I think that's too late. I think we'll get the announcement spring next year, and then we'll get the actual release fall in 2021. That's my prediction. I'm going to stick to that, and I'm highly confident in it. And really, only time will tell. I wouldn't be surprised if they... Well, that's the thing. It doesn't make sense for them to try and butt in with the Sony and PlayStation hype going on. It makes sense for them to take a back seat, and I talk about that more in the other video. Anyways, we're going way over time for a quick flange. I gotta wrap this up. I'll spare you all the like and subscribe stuff, although do please subscribe. But I won't go on more than that. Thanks for watching. Sorry this went on much longer than a quick flange should go on. Streaming some VR, virtual reality today, this evening, and then streams will switch to a morning time, and going to be trying some different new things when it comes to the streaming. Tonight's stream will be on YouTube. I'll be multicast streaming next week, so it'll be 3 different locations. Keep an eye on the Twitter, the Facebook page, all that good stuff. If you got anything to add, criticize, feedback, got some ideas or opinions, flange that all up in the comments down below. Hit me up during a stream if you want to talk about this stuff, or on social media, on the Twitter, Facebook page, whatever. Thanks for bearing with this quick flange, not being as quick as I was hoping. I thought I'd be able to get through it quicker, but it's just too much stuff. I should have just done a regular episode. My bad. I thought I'd be able to cram it in. Anyways, gotta wrap this up. We're over time. Thanks for watching. Flange it up. Remember to bring a towel. Have a good one. Bye.